Yeah.
But let's just check.
They're good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The-
they're good. Yeah, I think so. This is the way that we would usually do the walk, okay? Okay. You can have this for your very own.
I've never had a microphone that was fuzzy.
I know, aren't they cute? Okay. Hi, everybody online. Thanks for joining us. We have a small in-person crowd today for the Lunch and Look with Kurt Noll. Before we get started, I'll introduce myself. My name is Lucy Betterhendler. I'm the curator here at the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, which is located in Brandon in Treaty 2 territory, the ancestral lands of the Cree, the OG Cree, the Anishinaabe, Dakota, and the Métis Nation. With that, I will welcome Kurt Noll, whose show Fake Picasso opened yesterday. I'm so excited for this show because it's so filled with art history. I'm an art historian, but it's not dry. It's really funny. Excuse me. And there's so many details in every little painting. So
We're going to discuss every single detail in every painting.
every 45 painting, every one of these 45 paintings. I'm really looking forward to this tour. Anybody in person, online, interrupt us at any time to ask questions. Online, you can do that by typing into the comment section on YouTube or Facebook there, and we'll be able to see those here in the gallery. So let's go in order, shall we?
Okay. Is that what you want to do? Just walk from painting to painting? Is that the plan?
We can move. We're mobile, but I put this here on purpose because it has a little bit of absolutely everything.
Yeah. Mainly it has Allie.
Yeah, mainly.
Who is right here behind the camera. And she really was the beginning. I should probably say that I'll probably talk most about method and things like that. I don't talk much about larger themes or messages.
That's why I'm
or something.
here. Yeah.
By the way, I read your little essay in the thing, and very perceptive. I learned some things about myself. So I recommend everybody read that little essay. It's very interesting.
Thanks.
Never knew that about myself. It's very interesting.
That you're a faker.
Yeah, I'm a faker. A happy faker. But it fit. Those words fit. But yeah, I guess you say this has a little bit of everything that I do, and that's true. But it also, I think, is a good example of how I work, because it really began with Allie. She and I interact quite often at Thursday night figure drawing sessions, and one time she struck a pose that I thought, that's interesting, but then she very quickly moved away from that. She wasn't posing at the time. She was just talking to somebody. And but that image stuck in my mind for a few weeks, and so I wrote to her and I said, will you please pose for me? And I just told her to dress in a nice professional looking outfit and pose in a way that's just comfortable and natural to her. And that's what she did. And that became the nucleus for the painting. But I also told her, you're looking at a person you're not entirely pleased with. And that's why she has that expression, which I think makes the painting perfect. So then from there, I just thought, okay, who's she looking at? Because I didn't know yet. I didn't know what the environment would be. I didn't know what the room was or anything. And I thought, well, she'd have to be looking at the person who's painting the picture, and that would be me. So I'm over here somewhere, and she's looking at me. So how do I convey that in a picture? Well, there ought to be a mirror somewhere in the room so that somebody can see the reflection of me. And by the way, I'm wearing my eye patch, which I always wear when I'm painting because one of my eyes is not so great. And then I just started building the room around that. And as Lucy is want to stress, art history came into it. I decided that her environment would have to be an environment where she loves art. Allie loves art, so it would have to be an environment that's filled with art. And somewhere early on the way, I decided that that Picasso would be a perfect foil behind her shoulder. And that Picasso is called Still Life on a Pedestal Table. So then I thought, well, then I should have a still life on a table in the painting. So this table appeared in the room, and the fireplace appeared as an excuse to have a mirror above it. And Allie ought to have pet cats, of course, but ordinary house cats would be boring. So jaguars seemed the perfect thing. So 2 jaguars. And then I started filling it with art. There's some Cezannes behind my shoulder and above me in the mirror, and there's a nice painting on the wall, and of course the Picasso over here. And I decided to flood it with some sunlight from a window, a la Edward Hopper. So I tried to get as many art references into it as possible. Just for fun. I'm not sure how the chipmunks ended up in the painting.
There's a few chipmunks around the exhibition. I think these are the only leopards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The chipmunks just sort of wormed their way into the painting without my knowledge, so there they are.
Yeah.
But that's sort of how the painting came about, and I think the painting is also a good example of the steps that I take, because most of the work was done on scrap paper with a pencil. Long before I ever picked up a paintbrush, I had worked out the entire composition, and that took a very long time. This was a painting that I worked on off and on for weeks and weeks. I don't remember exactly how long. It's been too long since I painted it. I don't remember. But I would guesstimate that I put as many hours into the planning process on scrap paper as I spent actually applying pigment to the canvas with a paintbrush. So it's one of those paintings that I think of in my mind as a 50-50 painting.
It's an interesting way to think of it. I know from a member show talk that it's similar with your Cubist portraits, where you just work it in your brain, and then...
Which is very opposite of Braque and Picasso, because they seem to have just spontaneously looked at the canvas and said, here's what I want to do. And
that's why you're such a fake, right?
Yeah, I'm a fake Cubist. Yes, yeah. I'm a fake everything, I guess.
And then,
I like the fact that you said I'm also a fake academic painter. I thought that was great.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because of all of these still lifes, which we'll see a lot of, we have this reference to El Greco, if we want to get very meta about it, putting yourself in this kind of martyr-like misunderstood position because of the psychology between the two of you, right?
Yeah, the pose is actually from Velázquez, which is another Spanish painter, too.
With the mirror, So I was going to reference the Velázquez in the mirror, where after his time, the mirrors were always kind of shifted to the side. I think probably out of some morality, out of some modesty, right? That they had to be, oh no, it's just incidental that you can see. And Velázquez had that just, no, I'm painting myself. Because I'm working really hard.
Here I am.
Yeah. No, I was thinking the St. Jerome with the kind of...
And that's why I dressed myself in a coat and tie, because he's dressed in a really nice outfit that he surely did not paint in.
For sure,
so I put myself in a similar kind of outfit.
Yeah, so everybody should keep an eye out for all of these elements, right? The self-portrait, the table, the animals, the little references to different masterpieces all throughout the space, and also the sunlight and the architecture, right? The precision of your built environment, I think, is something that you bring up a lot. Yeah.
Had to make sure that the arches were the right height for the person who's standing in the archway.
So you built those arches.
Yeah, I essentially built those arches. That is what your house looks like, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Great. So we'll move on. We will also say the Alumni Association is here to welcome you when you first walk in.
Cubist Alumni Association. I forget what year I gave it, 1925 or something like that. And that's Gris, and that's Picasso, and that's Braque. And I did try to emulate the kind of Cubist portrait that Gris would do, and the kind of Cubist portrait that Picasso would do, and what Braque would do. So each figure is sort of modeled after actual artwork by those three figures. Why did I paint this? I have no idea.
And you also gave it this kind of like sepia tone.
Yeah,
You made it.
yeah,
Your other stuff is very,
it's
very
like it's
saturated.
a casual photograph from an actual alumni association,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is totally made up, but there it is.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to go that way or this way?
I'll go any way you want.
All right, let's go inside the museum. That was
All
kind of
right,
the joke that I
inside
was
the
telling.
museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I have to say, I was very surprised to find my quotations on the little
I love
cards.
it.
I wrote a few notes to. I wrote a few notes in emails to Lucy as we were discussing the show, and she put some of the quotations from my emails on the cards. I did not expect that to happen.
Well, as I explained, right, that it's so art historical and you are so uninterested in being serious about these things that I thought any captions that I made would not be in the spirit of your practice. So importantly, you're doing this really technical work, and then you go, this is from a lyric. I didn't like that title. I think the tone of it suits the tone of the exhibition in a way that I would have ruined. Yeah.
The painting came first. The idea for the painting came first. And then I was thinking, well, what am I going to call that? And Dylan's song popped into my head, so it became Inside the Museum, which is from Bob Dylan's song. I don't know. It's painted on sand, and it's deliberately a loose style. I didn't try to, make it too technically perfect, but I did want to give the impression of a traditional frame that you would see in a musty old museum, and an artist who is trapped inside the museum.
And the trompe-l'oeil, the fakery of that frame, right, of painting something that's just a material, right, is something that the Cubists do, but they never would have done this Rococo gold frame, right? Very funny to very few.
Although, oddly enough, in some museums, those Cubist paintings are framed in those weird Rococo frames.
Yeah, because they're expensive. That's why.
And
I described this series as the most mysterious of all of them, even though they're so literal.
Yeah, and I was intrigued by your description of them as being mysterious. They're really, I'm from Pennsylvania, and my wife and I have been going to D.C. to the galleries and the art museums quite often all my adult life. And so I decided just to document that a little bit. This is my wife, and this is her sister, Anita. And in each of these paintings, they are viewing a work of art. And that painting, they're in the East Wing of the National Gallery in D.C., viewing a Picasso. Probably one of my favorite all-time Picassos.
Me too. This is I'm from Washington, D.C., so I spent a lot of time with this one, and it's the one that made me understand him.
Yeah.
What the hype is about.
Yeah.
And the boy with the horse, I think, is just to the side of this one.
Yeah, there are a number. The blue girl with a fan, too, in D.C., I think, is mesmerizing painting as well. So then maybe we should go to the far end before the middle. This is the Hirshhorn Museum, which is also on the mall in Washington, D.C. It's a different museum, but it's a part of the Smithsonian. And then again, we have Tina, my wife, and her sister Anita viewing one of the paintings at the Hirshhorn.
Yeah.
There's something about that image that I find perfect.
Me too.
It's a capture of a work of art, but it's also a capture of people contemplating a work of art and people contemplating the people who are contemplating the work of art. So it's kind of.
You said what you want to do. The reason that you paint is for that moment of being struck.
Yes.
And so having these two people visiting, right? So this tight relationship in the visiting, and also the taking the time to figure out if that art's going to strike, right? Is very much what your work is about. Yeah.
And then in the middle one, I turned it into a tourist event. So here my wife and her sister are at the East Wing enjoying a painting by Chuck Close.
Which is the contemporary wing of the National Gallery.
And here they're in the West Wing, which is the much more traditional gallery. And they are enjoying a medieval triptych And then in between, they are on the metro in Washington, D.C., heading toward the galleries. And there's a little poster on the metro wall advertising Thibaut paintings at the Hirshhorn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, the DC Metro is also the site of many accidental Renaissance photographs. If anybody wants to Google it when they get home, accidental Renaissance, because it's a beautiful metro.
Yeah, it is.
And everything's kind of framed in these thirds, including the door and the seats and all of these things. So it's actually a site of a lot of contemporary references in this way.
Yeah, of all the metros in North America, the DC Metro I've always considered to be the cleanest, the nicest.
And it's honestly cheap. Well, it was when I was there.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Okay.
A little plug for those who want to go on tour in DC. Subways are great.
Hold on. We're good? Who's taking a break? Okay.
Okay.
What do you Okay, we're good. We're back. Okay,
We're good?
thanks for patience online and in person. So we were in the DC Metro in 2018, I think, when the Hirshhorn had a Thiebaud exhibit. And then well, these are earlier than
These
that.
are earlier, yeah.
Yeah.
2014, 2015, I seem to have gone through a
You have a
Thiebaud
number of
phase.
them. We've just chosen
Yeah,
5
yeah,
for this exhibit. Yeah. So talk to me, why Thiebaud?
Oh, I've always loved him.
Yeah.
The first time I ever visited the Hirshhorn was probably early teens. I don't know how old I was. And the Thiebaud paintings just blew me away. They were wonderful. And then when I went over to the National Gallery, and there was a big Thiebaud of his pastries. Really big one. It's still there. Part of the permanent collection at the National Gallery. And he's always been one of my favorite painters. I think the thing that struck me first about him is he lays his paint on, he uses oil, I use acrylic, which is a very different animal, but he uses oil, and he lays it on so thickly that it's obvious he's not overpainting, right? He knows exactly what brush stroke he needs for that spot, and he puts it on there, and he just lays it on there. So it's like he sculpts the canvas.
And especially the desserts, it's icing-like, right? There's a reference to that.
It looks like you could just taste that stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted to learn to paint like Thiebaud, just to learn something about painting.
Yeah. And I think specifically in this pastry one where you can see those shadows, that's what always really strikes me about Thiebaud paintings is the colors that he sees in the darkness, right, in the shadows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he taught me to look for color everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's unusual to have hands in a Thiebaud, which is why I chose these, because it's a little bit of you, a little bit of him.
That's
right?
a little bit of my advertising background, right? These are basically advertising posters from my days at the ad agency. I think Kurt Schultz said this almost looks like it's a religious icon.
For sure, yeah.
So, yeah.
Excuse me. I didn't include, that's my real voice. I didn't include your quote for this one, but this is your favorite of your Thiebaud's, called Cherries, and it's actually direct of a slot machine.
Yeah,
right?
he did some slot machines.
Yeah.
This slot machine I sold at an auction. I wanted to buy it, but it was way too expensive. So I just made sure I snapped a whole bunch of photographs from different angles, and then I used the photographs to construct the painting.
Yeah.
And to hit the jackpot, you need 3 cherries. So I decided to put a bowl of cherries in there and call the painting Cherries.
I didn't make that connection. I thought you just put cherries in there to distract us.
It's 2 cherries and an orange. So we didn't quite hit the jackpot.
If I remember, his doesn't either. Yeah.
And even though this was sold at an auction in Canada, all of the coins inside it were nickels, American nickels. American nickels, not Canadian.
Interesting.
So I really wanted to buy that thing, but I couldn't.
Another really big thing about Thiebaud is his color palette. Are these pastels, this very West Coast kind of thing?
Yes.
And that's not like your normal tendencies,
but
right?
I learned, like I say, one of the things I learned from Thiebaud is to free myself up with color. Faye Jelly also taught me a lot about color.
She had a big Thiebaud phase too. Yeah.
She, just looking at her paintings, and then I went to her house one time and visited with her and talked with her, and she taught me a little bit more about how to think about color, how to use color in the painting. Color has always been a challenge for me, and I think really between Thiebaud and Faye, they unleashed me.
Yeah, maybe describe that it's a challenge worth facing, right? That the rewards are great.
Yeah.
So I put this one here as a transition
Okay.
from the Thiebaud to your still lifes here.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of reference to both of them, and it doesn't fit in aesthetically with the other pieces.
Another thing that even as a child, as a teenager, visiting the galleries, just a few years before that, photorealism had been a thing in the avant-garde, and that always intrigued me. And so there's a wee bit of a desire for photorealism in some of my paintings. And I think this is one of them where I sort of went over the deep end with that kind of idea. But once again, as Lucy has been pointing out, I peppered the picture with some toys just to, so it's not an ordinary breakfast.
Yeah.
It's just something that I hope intrigue the viewer.
I think photorealism is always, like, we have a Chuck Close over there that you're looking at in the East Wing, but it's also always been really appealing to artists because you can kind of tell how successful the piece is based on how much it mimics the appearance of something. And so, like, in this trajectory here, what I like is how much you've challenged yourself by adding the refraction of light through the glass, by making sure that your shadows are reflecting light as well, right? And that's how we're able to understand these kind of more traditional still lifes, right? Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were still here. I looked over my shoulder and you had disappeared.
We're being trailed. Yeah.
The camera work is by Allie. She's doing a great job.
Fabulous work on the camera, Allie. Thank you.
And yeah, this kind of this is the same toy as here.
It's a collection.
That's why you put these side by side.
Not at all, but yeah.
But yeah, this toy right here is this toy right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which gives you also a sense for the scale of the two paintings.
So there's a couple, I really like how abstracted the Weeping Buddha is, how it would not be recognizable without the title. I like your references to that bright sunbeam through the window as well, right? Those shadows, I think, connect these two really well. Yeah. Anything to say? How about the scale of your still lifes? Your still lifes, you seem to kind of prefer 20-inch, a more easel-sized painting.
Yeah, if I'm doing small objects like this, it seems, unless I want to do something Chuck Close-ish, I'm not going to do a huge, a massive canvas. So, these objects are roughly actual size.
Right.
So I picked a canvas where I could paint them roughly actual size.
Right.
So yeah, the 20 by 20 format works well for this kind of painting, and also the 18 by 24, that type of painting. I do occasionally do a much larger canvas for a still life, but it's because I have something else in mind. This one is one of my personal favorites. I should probably say that most of the objects in most of my paintings are objects I own, with exceptions like the slot machine. I could not afford to buy. But and the objects that I don't own are usually things I've seen sold at public auction or a flea market or something like that. But this is just a bunch of objects that I own, and some of them are little toys that I picked up along the way. This little snowman is a Christmas decoration from the 1950s. That was handed down to me from my family. That rocket was one of my earliest toys when I was a little boy in the early 1960s. And it's a bank, you put your little quarter in there and you press the red button and it goes up into the rocket. And
for a brief moment you had a pineapple.
And for a brief moment before we ate it, I had a pineapple. The mirror with the Apple stencil on it is an actual mirror from the Beatles' Apple recording studio in London, 1968, which I am the proud owner of because it was handed to me from a friend who received it from a friend who was in a band called 10 Years After, who received it from Ringo Starr. So that's why I call the painting Ringo's Mirror, and that's why I put a little Topps bubblegum card of Ringo on the mirror. I taped it to the mirror when I painted the picture.
And you've set up a Picasso and a Rembrandt as backdrop.
Yeah, I used Picasso's Woman Before a Mirror so that she would be in the mirror. I don't know, just one of those stupid little jokes I tried to put in my paintings.
And you have a few of these that are not in the show because they don't have any toys in them. I had to make some decisions,
editorial decisions.
Exactly.
But again, all this is, I just went around the house and picked objects from the house that I thought would work together to make an interesting composition. That's all I did.
And
So-
these three are really why I called you an academic painter, right? Pretending to be an academic painter, as so the without being commercial, without being advertisements,
You're
right?
right.
There's something of just
Yeah.
let's study light and form here, right?
Yep. Yep. And these toy cars were toys I played with as a child. I was born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and these toys were manufactured in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
And then you kept them forever.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Renninger's is a brand new still life.
Yeah, I just finished that one over Christmas. Yeah, so that's, I guess, the most recent painting in the
We
show.
have the
Oh,
comic strips there. And
yeah,
inside
this
the
one
museum.
and Inside the Museum, I think, are the two most recent paintings. Yeah, this, again, all the objects in this painting are objects I own, except the carnival target, which I saw somewhere along the way. I can't remember if it was a public auction or a flea market. But what interested me was trying to create a composition that would use a color combination that I don't usually use. Yellow is actually a hard color to work with. And I wanted to paint a picture that would rest on that combination of yellow with these counterbalancing pigments. And then I knew that if I had this carnival target with this fuzzy stuff, that it would go well with those types of objects. The color would work through. So I really put the picture together thinking in terms of abstract composition and color combinations. And then I called it Renninger's because that's a flea market in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that I used to go to when I was a boy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, great. Again,
I don't know how
I'm
much.
not keeping track either, but we
I'm
did
afraid,
lose 5
I'm
minutes.
afraid everyone's going to get bored and quit.
I should ask if there are any questions so far. I assume that you guys would just interject. Emil, do we have anybody online? Okay.
Okay. So we're talking into the void.
Yeah. Well, they're listening. They're not asking questions right now. And yeah, we'll edit out the big block that we lost there for the technical difficulties.
More along the same sort of theme.
Yeah.
Gathering up objects around the house. The one exception is this ceramic pot right here is actually a 3,000-year-old pot that's in a museum.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of handling pottery very similar to that when I was studying in Israel, but I don't own that pot. that's way above my pay level. Yeah, just some objects around the house. The same here, objects from around the house, and a little toy Mountie that I played with as a child. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, we had a Royal Canadian Mountie toy to play with.
Speaking of your studying in Israel, just backing up, is there, so your other job
Studying
is
ancient people.
Professor of religion, and specifically the ancient people involved in religion.
Yeah.
Do you ever work any of that research out in painting?
That would be the closest to it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Like just the draw to the object, the age of the
Yeah,
object?
I'm drawn to the objects as objects, but the ancient people I studied were largely aniconic, so they didn't. This is a Philistine.
So you guys wouldn't have gotten along.
This is a Philistine pot. This is not an Israelite pot. Israelite pots are very plain. But you can see all the little animals and stuff. Lovely artwork. Philistines were not Philistines. They were very sophisticated people, and beautiful pottery.
Yeah.
This is a beer jug. This is what they serve their beer in. We know that because it has traces of beer in it.
Nice.
The Philistines drank a lot of beer. The Israelites drank wine.
Oldest recipe, right? Sumerian beer recipe.
The Philistines were apparently very good and very productive beer makers. Yes.
Great. And now these both are kind of not exactly still lifes, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we end
Yeah,
our
this-
still life wall.
Kind of we're getting into what weird things are going on in Kurt's brain kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This this was just an exercise in visualization. I thought to myself one day, I was looking at a chessboard, and I thought to myself one day, how could you have a chessboard that also dissolves into a pool table? Can I visualize that? So that's where I started. I started with a chessboard melting into a pool table. And then I thought, well, I can't just have chess pieces. So I trotted out some toys.
And some beer.
And and some beer in the background. A very tiny pot with some very small flowers in it. Put it in front of my window, my kitchen window, and got some light into it. And to finish things off, I thought, well, why not have a gorilla staring at us through the pocket of the pool table?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Good.
And afterwards, Lucy, in one of her emails to me, said, I'm thinking about your surrealist paintings, and that jolted me because I don't think of my paintings as surrealist. Because I think of surrealism as that's psychological, Freudian kind of stuff.
Darker.
Yeah, and I don't think of my work that way, but yeah, I guess it is kind of surreal.
Yeah. We'll get to the ones that I was really pointing to. I don't know how else to describe them.
Yeah. So I guess, I am a surrealist by accident.
Yeah, fake surrealist.
Fake surrealist, you're right.
Yeah. So, speaking of sticking a monkey in it.
Yes. Now this one started with the comic strips. My wife and I own a couple of Philadelphia Record newspapers from 1933. I'm not sure exactly where they came from. We speculate that maybe they were lining the dresser drawers of an old antique dresser drawer. But in any case, I have these newspapers. One of them is December 24th, 33, and the other is December 31st, 23. Both Sundays, so there's plenty of Sunday comics.
And color.
And and color. And I started looking at the Tarzan and also the Pollyanna Pals, both of which are highly visual. They don't really depend on the words. I mean, Tarzan always puts some words in there, but you don't have to read them because the pictures tell you the story. So I thought, well, there's the start. What can I do with those comic strips? And then I thought of my father's toy truck. This is a toy truck that my dad played with when he was a little boy in the 1930s. So I have a 1930s comic strip, and I have a 1930s truck, and I put a 1930s radio with it. And that's the only thing that's not 1930s. That's medieval. That's the only thing that's not an actual object. I had to use a photograph.
Oh.
That's a hand-carved bishop from a chess set from, I think, the 12th century.
Wow.
The 11th century. Yeah.
Is it kind of life-size?
Yeah, it's about life-size, yeah. Everything in this painting is about life-size, except the truck's a little smaller than it actually is in real life. The truck is a bit bigger.
And then why did you, this is kind of more painterly than you usually do with making it translucent, this kind of...
Yeah, I wanted to give a reason why the comics are in the background there, so I sort of painted them into a wall. It's supposed to be a kind of just a
as though they're
messy...
emerging out of a whitewash or purple wash.
Yeah, wall. So everything's 1930s except for the goldfish and the monkey. I don't think they're as old as that.
What's really remarkable about this one is that there's spatter on it, and then there's fake spatter all over it as well, right? So these actual brush strokes that are rendering drips.
Yeah. All that spatter is fake. There's a little bit that I used a toothbrush for. Yeah. Like right there, I used a toothbrush for some of that, but almost all of these drips were painted on.
So fun, right? Like
this drip here, that's hand painted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about the methodical painter, right? That's what we're talking about. So this is the first that we're looking at that's like, well, no, I guess the objects on a table kind of in that vein as well.
Yeah.
But I was calling things surrealist. It's the tweaking of reality in such a way, right?
Yeah, and this is tweaked, isn't it? Because if you look at it just casually, you say, oh, well, it's a naturalistic picture of a woman sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
But if you think about it for just a few moments, you realize if she stands up, that table is way too low and the painting is way low on the wall. It's not right. And also the chair, if you look down here, the chair is right next to the molding of the the wall, which means there's absolutely no room for that table to exist.
Yeah.
So it's not a naturalistic painting. It
Yeah.
might at first glance seem like one, but it's not.
Right. And it's all kind of in service of the comfort, I think, that comes out in it, and in service of the monkey.
Yes, both.
Just not talk about the monkey.
Yeah, it's and the monkey's slightly in shadow, so it's possible that a casual observer might not even notice. But that's the thing. I'm hoping to
Sneaky
get
monkey.
people to not just look at the painting, but see the painting.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's something, so if I may make it not fun for a second, something that Cézanne is very famous for is reducing that depth of field by
Yes.
treating all of his brushstrokes really democratically.
Yes.
And so you've reduced this depth of field,
Yes.
and she has a Cézanne in the background talking about doing that right in
Yes.
front of a trompe-l'oeil still life.
Yes, and that's a good observation to make because it's not coincidence.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going for. I can't paint. I've tried many times to paint like Cézanne. I love Cézanne's painting, and I wish I could paint like him, but he's way above me. So, I decided, well, what can I do? I'll do that and flatten the canvas in a different sort of way, and that's the way I did it.
Yeah. Another person wanted to paint like Cézanne is here in the background of the same scene that Cézanne has painted in a way that Kurt's comfortable painting, being inspired by yet another 20th century artist.
Yeah, Braque. The only thing it's not quite. This is an actual Braque from 1913, I think. Except I changed a couple little things. Like he had a French word here. I don't remember which word it was, but I took it out and put the word Braque in there instead. A couple little tweaks like that, but it's essentially a Braque. And then I painted it with a slightly Cézanne-esque brush stroke
with
to
your
the
blocks
canvas.
there.
Yeah.
And again, a little off, right, as far as the depth of field.
Oh, yeah.
And quite a fun narrative happening in there as well.
Yeah.
I particularly like the reflection of the bills into the bottle.
Yes.
I don't know. It's kind of moralistic to me. You're throwing your money away. It's like an impossible piggy bank kind of thing. Yeah.
And he's obviously got the aces.
Yeah. And where you can really see the Cézanne is in this the treatment of the chairs, how there's this translucence. Yeah. A little bit of both of these things.
I hope the viewers are hanging on. This is getting long, isn't it? I hope we're not going too long. Card players are a recurring theme. I find it an interesting challenge. Cézanne apparently found it an interesting challenge too. He did a number of card players.
It's because of the psychology, I think, right? Between them.
Yeah, I don't think for Cézanne he was all that interested in the psychology. He just wanted the genre,
symmetry?
the genre image. I think he was looking at earlier century paintings that were much more dramatic and saying, how can I simplify that and turn that into my kind of painting? Right. So I think he was just taking the subject matter and doing it his way. So I took the subject matter and I'm doing it my way. But yeah, I'm not sure which of those two guys is going to win, but I kind of think he will because he looks like he's more in control of himself. That guy seems to be
angrier. Yeah.
It's on sand, which is a challenge in its own right.
There is something. So the Thibault in your body of work, we know where it comes from kind of a fandom, but also that reference to pop art, your use of playing cards and dollar bills as ready-made objects, right?
Yes.
In order to ground a composition. Right. Even if you're in kind of a hyper-realist, surrealist space, you're still using these objects. If you think about like the top in the movie Inception, something that grounds you in reality, right?
Yes. Yeah. And this also is on sand. This one is on sand. This one's on sand as well. And the Kurt Schultz and I were talking about this one last evening. Kurt was interested in the background here.
Yeah.
Because I, used a wash, an undercoat of a kind of a muddy, purpley kind of muddy.
Yeah, it's got a lot of depth to
area.
it.
And then I've dry brushed over with a couple different types of oranges and pinks and reds.
Yeah.
So there's probably 4 or 5 dry brush layers on top of that ground.
In order to achieve that kind of
Yeah.
luminosity. Yeah. And this one even more so as far as the variation of colors. Yeah.
Yes. And Kurt was looking at that, and he said, "Where did you get that idea?" And I said, "Paul Gauguin." If you look at some of Gauguin's paintings, he loves to do that kind of thing.
Does he work on sand?
He doesn't work on sand, but he loves to do this with his backgrounds
Okay.
and a number of his paintings.
Just work it and work it and work
Yeah,
it with those. Yeah. With
And
that
it does make portions of his canvas glow, and that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Great.
I put the table in it so that it would be a set.
Yeah.
But I wanted them to be enough separate so that there's some sort of psychological tension here.
Yeah.
She's obviously in control and he's not. So I wanted to have that kind of tension, but also have them as a unit.
And also worth saying that the Cubists often use tables as ready-mades as well in order to come up with a surface for those flat objects to be rendered on. Yeah.
And alcohol.
And alcohol, yeah. All of that
ashtrays
backroom
and pipes
billiards.
and all those things that Cubists love to use.
Yeah. No women allowed, but other than that.
Well, it's the 21st century.
All right, so this is a rare winning hand.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And,
a full house.
And a totally different iconography as far as the art on the background. Can you tell me on the back wall?
I don't remember what my thinking was. I just know that once I hit on what I wanted the background to be, it seemed right.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what I was thinking. I'm not sure what kind of room I thought they were in. But they obviously they have books on a shelf back
It's
here.
just from last year.
Yeah, it's not long ago. And I decided to put that maze in there.
Yeah.
Just as an added feature to, I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It
Catch
somehow
someone's attention. Yeah.
makes it seem less like a space where that's designed for this activity, more like they're kind of in a library or something.
Yeah,
right?
something. Yeah.
I needed this one. It's hard to fit in. Again, we're going to see another trompe l'oeil with this breaking through the canvas in just a few paintings.
Yeah.
But just bringing all of those different motifs into it in this really, really humorous way, I think is.
If you look at a traditional set of cards, the King of Hearts, he has his sword behind his head and it disappears. So some people joke that he's stabbing himself in the head, and the sword is in his head, in his skull. And I thought, well, where does that sword go? So I decided to show you where the sword goes by having it disappear behind him and come out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all it is. It's just a King of Hearts that's been turned into a Chimp of Hearts.
Is it symmetrical? Did you do? I don't want you to give away your tricks necessarily, but
Yeah, it's close to symmetrical, although I wasn't being obsessive about
you didn't
that.
like stencil or just checked.
A lot of measuring.
A lot of measuring.
A lot of measuring.
And who's your monkey model?
Biologist friend of mine has some interesting photographs of chimps and
Fabulous.
monkeys.
That's so much better than a Google search.
And I like the banana. That's my favorite part of the painting.
Yeah, it fits in really well. But it shouldn't, but it does.
It shouldn't, but it does. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah. So now on thematic, this is very 1920s kind of post-cubist work.
Yes. The kind of Rococo cubism kind of stuff, which I've always loved, right? Some of Picasso's Rococo cubist paintings are among my favorite Picassos. And that's really what I was going for here. This one started with no subject matter at all. I wanted to do a yellow and purple composition. That's all I was thinking. I want to use yellow and purple, which are, to my mind, the combination that's hardest to work with. Maybe because you don't see it in nature as much. I don't know. But how can I do that? What can I do with the yellow and purple? And eventually it became a cubist painting. It didn't start that way. I think actually it started as non-objective, very abstract.
Oh.
But
And then you couldn't stand it.
usually I can't stand that. I need reference to something. So it eventually became a cubist painting, and then for a short while, it was a guy playing chess. But I decided, no, he's playing poker, he's playing blackjack. And one of my students was at the reception last evening, and he said, am I seeing things, or are there two men kissing each other here?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, you're not seeing things. It's the same face seen from two angles. But yeah, it does, their lips meet right here, so it does sort of look like two men kissing each other.
Very tenderly, actually, yeah.
Yeah. But, I did try to echo the card in his face here.
So very graphic. This one as well, although this I assume started with the guitar player.
Yes, this one actually started with a photograph of Paul McCartney.
Oh.
That's where I began. I had this picture of Paul McCartney from the early 1970s, and I said, what can I do with that?
Yeah.
And you can still sort of see Paul McCartney's eye here.
Okay.
He has that kind of droopy eyelid thing going. But that's about the only part of it that still looks like Paul McCartney.
Yeah. And what you've done here is mimic that collage aspect, that original.
I call it fake collage.
Analytic cubism.
I've always been attracted by the idea of collage, but I don't actually like real collage. It's too messy. Yeah. So I paint collage instead. Yeah. Fake collage.
Keep that control.
Right.
And here, there's a lot of that, including
the
what do you call it? The way that seat is done.
Oh yeah, oh gee, now I can't think of the word.
I took it right out of existence. And all these different wallpaper textures. I think this is a self-portrait, yeah?
Yeah, I used myself as the model for this one. And this is a chair we have in the house, a cane bottom chair, that's what it's called.
Cane bottom chair,
yeah. Just trying to imitate, give the viewer the impression that everything's pasted on kind of collage, but it's a fake collage. Yeah. And then I used a couple of naturalistic elements just to make the image shimmer a little bit.
Juan Grise's cigarette, right? That little, you can't fool me, emerging out into the space.
Yep. And I hid a little tiny fake Rothko in there.
So when you did your member show talk, so it would have been two Decembers ago, you showed us all the prep sketches. So anybody that's watching on YouTube, you can just go back a couple artist talks.
This is the one we talked about.
Yeah, which is why I'm familiar with kind of your process more, just filling up sketchbooks, trying to figure out how to create these multiple perspectives.
Edgar Degas, the French painter, is supposed to have said, and I don't know the exact quote, but something along the lines, Degas said, if my painting looks fresh and spontaneous, then all the long hours of careful planning have paid off. And I've always taken that to heart. I don't think my paintings look fresh and spontaneous. I'm not as good as Degas, but they are certainly carefully planned. There's lots of careful planning in my paintings.
Yeah. And then this is our transition back into kind of the more realistic. Right. I was talking about the hands breaking through.
Mm-hmm. The hands breaking through. Yeah, where you've got much more abstract hands there. You've got naturalistic hands here, but still the fake collage with the crumpled up paper and so forth, and the little piece of the music pasted on, but it's not pasted on, it's painted, and so forth. And the chord that she's playing is the actual chord that's in the music.
Yeah, and so just all of those different textures coming in. The layering, trompe-l'oeil, I think it's a great transition to we'll go to Volcano and your self-portrait here. So these two, with another cubist in the center, these two are really what I was referencing when I was talking about your surrealist paintings, right? It's just throw more and more at it, and obviously the sense of anxiety in both of them, right?
I have to admit, when I came in here last night and saw the show for the first time, I thought, that's a stroke of genius on the part of Lucy to put these two canvases side by side, because obviously here everything is flattened out, but I've thrown in a little bit of three-dimensional imagery.
Yeah,
here
so you
and
have
there.
the dollar here to give it
just a little bit of tension there between three-dimensional and two-dimensional imagery.
Yeah.
that's what this painting is all about. I wanted to have, I wanted to give the impression of a real room with a person really sitting in a real room, but flatten it down to the point where it's almost kind of abstract like this. So, you do get the sense of perspective.
Kind of a fisheye.
Yeah. But most of the canvas is so flat that it's really more of a compositional structure like that painting. So I never would have thought of putting these two paintings side by side, but I think it's...
They just look so good together.
Yeah,
I didn't think
yeah.
about your intention. They
It's
look great together. Yeah.
But
We also had somebody come yesterday who said, "Is all the same person?" This explains that.
that's a great compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have all of these art historical references: your pop culture, your Picasso, your monkey, your chipmunk, squirrel, whatever figured thing.
And it's all going to go up in smoke when the volcano hits.
Yeah, full of objects, just real rife with objects.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to decide what objects that would be in that.
I
had to decide what kind of room he was in.
Yeah.
And what's going to be outside the window. Is it going to be an urban environment, or is it going to be a suburban environment, or is he in an old shed?
Yeah.
If you look at the peeling paint, I guess he's in kind of a storage shed or something.
Wearing dress socks.
And but he's wearing a nice suit, a pair of pants from his suit, and nice dress clothes, and yet he's wearing armor for some reason. He's smoking a cigarette. The painting actually began with the armor. I was looking at a suit of armor that was hung on the wall in a museum, and I tried to imagine a person in the suit. And then I tried to imagine the person in the suit on a horse. And then I just had this stupid idea: what would that person look like if he was wearing that suit of armor and sitting in a lazy boy recliner? And then I thought, okay, now I've got a challenge. Now I've got to try to paint that. And it all just snowballed from that one idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And he does not have a winning hand.
He does not have a winning hand, no.
So this, I think, might be one of the most striking paintings in the show, which is why it's so the high contrast, the simplicity of the composition as well, right? If we compare it to Tina Reading, it's like you've really bared it down, but made it so much more intense in as far as the moment that's being captured.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. It went through a lot of iterations in the sketch stage. I had the room much more cluttered at one point in the sketches, and then emptied it out. At one time, there was just a small picture up on the wall, but it grew. I decided that I would have a larger-than-life portrait of the same person, and that way I could have the excuse of having the canvas tear and have the hand people look at it and sometimes say to themselves, well, it's a double portrait here and here, but it's actually a triple portrait here, plus the hand that's breaking through the canvas. That's the third portrait.
As far as the number of times you started with the portrait, that's interesting. Yeah. And it's so interesting that that's the afterthought, because it's the point of the painting now. It's a thesis statement.
The design stage doesn't necessarily, I guess it's kind of like a novelist. The earliest draft is not necessarily the point of the story.
Yeah, you have to wait and see which character is actually interesting here.
Yeah. Kurt Schultz and I often talk about the fact that he starts at a very different place than I do, because he starts with narrative and then he tries to visualize it. And I tend to start with just a visual element and then try to figure out how to construct a composition around that element.
And the monkey.
Which reminds me, actually, this painting began with the title, Self-Portrait with Monkey. I was looking at a book of Van Gogh, and that self-portrait with the damaged ear, and I thought self-portrait with this, and I eventually landed on self-portrait with monkey, and I thought that has a nice ring to it. So I wanted to paint a self-portrait with monkey. And at first I was just thinking of a conventional, head and shoulders portrait with a monkey sticking his face in from the corner. But I thought, no, there should be some sort of psychological tension between myself and the monkey. So I eventually ended up with the monkey down here yawning and separated from me both visually and in terms of distance and in terms of attitude and etc.
Let's go to the other side of the wall.
Okay.
And then we'll
I
wrap
hope the
it.
audience is hanging on for
They'll
all of
hang
this.
it on. They'll hang it on. They can review the tape afterwards. Do we have any questions? Any questions? No? And we've lost our trailers. We'll keep going.
They don't want to hear my voice any longer.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything particular that you want to, we didn't touch on this when we were at
I would just like to give a shout out to my wife because she came up with the title for this painting. I had just called it Ice Cream Cone. And she said, no, I Scream Cone. So that's the title.
Yeah.
I love that title.
Great.
But
yeah. And I love this painting too. I don't remember if I saw it I saw everything. But
yeah, you saw it at my house.
When I was curating, I was working with smaller things, and I had forgotten about all of the colors that went into this one. So I was really happy to see it in person again and remind myself. I mean, mostly I chose the big one because I couldn't choose 10 small ones.
I have done 2 versions of that one big and one small.
Yeah. And then these are kind of my thesis sentences for the exhibition is why they're on this wall. If you're online, you walk right in. So talk about them.
Well, there was a big scandal in New York City back in 2011, 12, somewhere in there.
That says 13.
I read the newspaper article about it in 2013. Somebody was selling fake modern paintings. And it immediately made me think, fake Picasso. Wouldn't that be an interesting subject matter? So I painted a fake Picasso, and he's holding a newspaper that says fake Picasso, and the photograph in the newspaper is this painting. So it's just kind of a visual joke about a serious problem, which is that they're selling fake modern paintings in New York, or at least they were in the early 2000s.
So this is where you have another painting that's not in the show called Painted Painter. This is where I would have put it because it's you learning how to distort these faces in a Picasso-esque kind of way. So compared to say Nightfall, how was the planning for this distortion?
This was easier to plan than Nightfall. Nightfall was a long, tedious process. This one came together more quickly, I think because I was really thinking about Picasso's own spontaneity.
Yeah.
And the way, I wanted it to be a little loosey-goosey. The brush stroke is much looser with Picasso specifically in mind. Now, nobody, even the most amateur person, would never mistake this as an actual Picasso, so it's not really a fake Picasso, but I'm calling it a fake Picasso.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then a few years later, this is the reason this opens is because your practice is so much about the people who have influenced you, right? You've talked about Kurt Schultz, you've talked about Tina, and this one has evolved into an homage to Neil Stauffer.
Neil Stauffer, Neil is part of the Thursday night figure drawing group that I've been a part of for many years, and he and I grew fairly close. And we bonded a little bit more after he saw this painting, because he saw this painting here in this gallery at one of the annual members show. And after the members show, I got this email from him. He said, "You're a trickster." He said, "I took a photograph of this painting and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing things I didn't notice when I was in the gallery." So I ended up having a couple conversations about this and about painting in general, and his attitude toward painting has influenced me as well. If you've ever seen,
he's very playful.
Yeah, if you've seen his paintings, he's a trickster. He's a playful painter and exuberant. I think that sort of is coming in this painting as well. But again, I tried to do tricks like have the canvas tear and the hand come through.
Yeah.
And the buttons on the sleeve are just round circles, but the cuff link is an actual diamond. I just tried to throw a little playful stuff like that in there.
Yeah, and doing the diagonal reflection I think is really clever with the front-facing table, all of those things. No monkey in this one.
No monkey in this one.
It's too bad.
I think this is pre-monkey. I don't think I'd done any monkeys by the time this one was painted.
Yeah.
I've always been very, very happy with the color in this painting. I think.
So this is yellow and purple again,
Yeah.
which you say is the hardest, but it shows up if you look
There
around.
again, I try to pick color schemes that are challenging just to see if I can pull it off. And this one, the whole time I was painting it, I was thinking, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't. And then one day I came out for breakfast and looked at the canvas and thought, oh, it is working.
Yeah, and this funny
coming
pastel, it's
together.
not like your other work from this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay, we'll stop. There's a couple more. You can come down in person if you want to see them.
A couple more paintings.
We have a question online. Okay, I'm going to go read it. I can read it now that I'm here. Okay, we have somebody asking about another influence. If Caravaggio is one of your influences because of all the chiaroscuro that they're seeing.
Yeah, not in the conscious sense that when I start designing, I'm thinking of Caravaggio specifically. But yeah, when I was in art school in the 1970s, I spent a semester in Florence. What do you study in Florence, Italy? You study Renaissance painting, and then post-Renaissance, high Renaissance, and then Mannerist and so forth. So that whole tradition of Renaissance and Caravaggio and the Mannerist and so forth, that's had a lot of influence on me.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about my method of using the grid on the canvas and then doing a small drawing and putting a grid on that small drawing and bigger grid on the canvas and transferring up.
Yeah.
Well, I learned that from Renaissance painting class in Italy in the 1970s, and I'm still doing that sort of thing. So yeah, is there some Caravaggio influence in it? Yeah. Not in the sense that I'm imitating him the way I took on Thibaut, but yes.
Yeah, but he's a teacher in that. And it seems like when we speak about your commercial training and that there's not that much joy in that, what has continued to spark joy has been learning from these teachers.
I will say there's one positive thing I learned from my days in advertising. I learned very quickly in advertising art that what I think I've achieved is not relevant. It's what the viewer experiences when the viewer sees the painting, right? Because I can't be there to hold their hand. I make an illustration for an advertisement, it gets published, it's out there in the world. I can't hold the hand of every viewer looking at that illustration and say, this means this, and I was thinking this. The viewer brings their own sensibilities, their own prior experiences, and they decide what worth or no worth that image has. And they decide what it means. So I've always,
so in practice
as
here,
a painter, I make the painting and then it lives its own life. And what I say about it is, at the end of the day, not relevant. Right? It either succeeds or it fails, and you decide that. I don't decide that.
and every time a new viewer comes to it, it has a chance to succeed or fail again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I think that's the most valuable thing I learned from advertising.
yeah.
The rest of advertising is terrible. Don't go into advertising. It's a horrible life.
No. Public art galleries are the way to go. Right?
I'm sorry?
Academia and public art galleries are the way to go.
Yeah,
right?
that's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do want to, while we're still on, I do
Yeah.
want to again thank you.
Oh yeah.
This is a fantastic show, and your perception of my work has taught me a few things about me. So thank
So that's
you.
what we like to provide.
Yeah.
And thank you for reaching out early. I moved in the pandemic, and I knew that it was my job to feature these artists of Westman, and I said, where are they? Because we were closed, right?
Yeah.
It was hard to meet everybody. So thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for continuing to work.
Yeah.
All this stuff. Fabulous. Are there any questions? Audience? Okay, we'll end it there. Thanks for coming. Share the video. Have a great weekend.
You too. Have we done?